Hoop Dreams, the podcast, an Unlearning Network production.
Joining us today on the Hoop Dreams podcast is none other than the legend himself, the man, legend in the broadcasting game. He's an award-winning writer, best-selling author, former NFL reporter, Sports Illustrated, I'm just going to call it what it is, legend, who created Inside College Basketball and Hoop Thoughts as a staple, and his must-read, now with The Athletic, the one and only, joining us today on Hoop Dreams podcast is Seth Davis. I'm Arthur. I'm sorry, I ain't Arthur Agee. I'm Will Gates. That's my dog.
Arthur Agee. And we sitting here with the handsome Seth Davis.
Man,
absolutely.
I should hang out with you guys more. No one says these nice things about me like you say. Talking, I don't want to say a word here. You guys got it good.
Well, Seth, we always start the show this way. And I just want to jump into it, man. When was the first time you saw Hoop Dreams? And where were you?
I have the exact answer to this, and you guys know how much that movie means to me. And I think a big reason why it means so much to me is where it entered my world, which is I was in New Haven, Connecticut. So remind me of the year. We're talking 94?
94?
94.
I graduated Duke in 1992. My first job out of college was at the New Haven Register in Connecticut covering high school sports. So I covered all the high school sports in town and really all over the state of Connecticut because it's a pretty good sized newspaper. But, I focused on basketball, and they had, a downtown movie theater, and I heard about this movie and I went and saw it. And I was just starting my journalism career. So it impacted me, obviously, in terms of how beautifully it was made, the storylines, all of the themes, much of which I was already witnessing. But I was also watching it, thinking about the movie makers. And I think about so many great things obviously come to mind. And Arthur, the great one where Sheila finds out that she passes her nursing exam and she's crying. And it's this incredible moment. I think most viewers are watching that and they're thinking, wow, that's a great moment, how special it is. I specifically remember thinking it, I can't believe they got that on camera for that golden moment of that beautiful woman finding out that piece of news and believing in herself in a way that maybe she never got a chance to before. So it hit me hard on all levels. And the fact that I've gotten to talk to you guys and write about you guys and get to know you guys, and now you're saying nice things about me on your podcast, this is a big time full circle moment for me. And I couldn't wait. My kids know I've seen it with them a couple of times because if I have a birthday or something, I get to do whatever I want to do. I say, all right, everybody sit down and watch it. We're going to watch it again. I'm like, yeah, we're going to watch it again. And then once it starts, everybody gets really into it. And the fact that it has held up for so many years, as you guys know, because I wrote the story on you, The Athletic did this big survey. And a lot of people at Athletic, this won't be hard to believe, are a lot younger than I am. And the fact that they would still consider Hoop Dreams one of the top 10 sports movies, not documentaries, sports movies of all time. That's a lot. It's a really beautiful thing you guys did opening your world like that.
Hey, Seth, so when you saw this, you in your late 20s?
Yeah, mid-20s. I was 24.
So did it have an impact on your career moving forward of I have a dream that I wanted to become a journalist or whatever? And after watching it, did anything inspire you to move forward into that?
Yes. Much like the book Friday Night Lights, I got assigned that book by Buzz Bissinger when I was in college. And I remember writing somewhere in the margins, this is what I want to do. This is the type of storytelling I want to do. And I don't begrudge anybody or, whatever, whether you're, a Stephen A. when you're given, big time opinions, or like a Zach Lowe where you're breaking things down, or a Woj who breaks news, or like an Adam Schefter breaks news. I am motivated and have always been motivated by storytelling. So as we have discussed so many times, Hoop Dreams is not a basketball movie, and to me, and it's not a sports movie any more than Friday Night Lights is a football book. It's using sports as a window into the world and kind of showing that common humanity. I often said, like when it comes to race, that ball doesn't know the color of the hand that's shooting it. If the arc is true, the ball goes in, and that's how I like to use sports as a window into greater storytelling.
With the college changes and everything, with the rule changes, did you always believe that student athletes should have gotten paid?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's such a shame that it's happening in such a mess. Like if the NCAA had any type of leadership at all, they could have seen 10 years ago, 15 years ago, say, "Hey, man, this thing is coming. So we can either do it ourselves or have it done to us."
Right.
And that's what's happened. So the answer to your question basically is yes, Arthur, but I would kind of correct the question, which is should they get paid more? And I have a hard time. Look, you cannot, when people say, "Oh, they're unpaid workers," like that is just indisputably, factually untrue. They are not unpaid. They get scholarship money. They get food, they get books, they get housing, they get stipends, they get Pell Grants, they get trained. If you really aspire to be a basketball player, you get training, you get coaching, you get media exposure, you get game experience. So they are I would say, very well compensated. The problem is when you start limiting compensation arbitrarily when costs are going up and the money coming in is so exponentially higher. So I'm glad they're having this opportunity, but I have to tell you, I've been a little bit of an outlier on that question, kind of defending the collegiate model, saying, hey, these kids are getting a pretty good deal. And by the way, there's hundreds of thousands of kids playing baseball, lacrosse, hockey, swimming, including a lot of female athletes getting access to athletics, access to higher education. So I think there's a lot of good in that model, but the problem was it was stuck and they made it in 1950 and it never modernized. So they had to go with the time to 2021 basically in a week. So they got a big shit sandwich on their hand.
You also know what I was just appalled by, that the NCAA is set up as a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, funny how that works. I mean,
what?
I'm definitely not intentionally not smart enough to know the ins and outs. There are a lot of, I think the technical IRS category is 501c3, right? Experience and all that and all your nonprofit work. You can work for a nonprofit and still take a pretty generous salary, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And look, I mean, it's like people say, well, this is just a business, but again, the only way to make money in college athletics is through TV, and the only sports who are making that kind of money are football and men's basketball. So you have all of, like people say, well, if it's all about money, well, why does the University of Illinois have a baseball team? Why do they have a soccer team? Why do they have a volleyball team? Those sports lose money for the school. And it does fit into it allows them to keep their nonprofit status, which allows them to do a lot of things. So it's a great point, Arthur. I mean, it's a big time mess. It's a big time mess.
Agee and I, we was talking about this a while ago, and we thought about, because we've been hearing everybody say, man, I would have made this if the rule was changed when we was playing. Well, Agee and I was saying, man, back in 1994, when Hoop Dreams came out, we could have, it could have changed our world. What were your thoughts on that? What do you think, Agee and I, what that would have meant for us?
Well, I mean, it would have made you more commercially viable to a lot of colleges. It would have enabled you guys, because you were still playing in college. So there was a lot that you couldn't cash in on. Yeah, that's a great point. Let me add this as the caveat. You guys are a different situation. I mean, you guys had, this incredible piece of art that really moved people. But all these, it's kind of like the ticket scalping market. In areas where scalping is illegal, tickets are really expensive. Once you make it illegal and you have this legal secondary market and StubHub and all that, what happens to the price of those tickets? They go way, way down. Same thing happened in the marijuana market. When marijuana is illegal, it's kind of expensive. So I've heard. I wouldn't know. But if you walk into like a legal dispensary, it's a lot less expensive. So I'm not sure. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the money that these kids think is going to be available to them is not going to be at nearly the level Now, like the Zion Williamsons, the Trevor Lawrences of the world, God bless them, they're going to cash in. But now all of a sudden, we got thousands of college athletes looking to make money off their name, image, and likeness, and there's only so many dollars in the ecosystems. I'm going to be very, very interested to see where the reality of that matches the expectations. But the point is they should have that opportunity, and I'm really glad that they're going to.
How did you think the NCAA, how did you think they can fix some of this, though? Because really, let me add this caveat to it also, to going back to your statement, where because the NCAA does a lot of great things, because we don't want to dismiss that.
Yes.
But how do they fix a system that clearly is working, but yet it's broke, if I can even say that? I mean, it's like they're in a funky place right now.
Yeah. And again, it's because it was forced on them by the courts and really even more so by these state legislatures. And so they were hoping, how's this for a brilliant strategy? Well, let's let the U.S. Congress fix this for us. Have you seen Congress?
Yes.
Right? Like that's your answer. That's your solution. So basically all these states have different laws. And so the NCAA has basically told their schools, it's up to you to figure out what you guys want to do based on what your law is. And the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, basically intimated recently that they're trying to get out of that bit. It's really like prohibition, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
Drinking. So what's the fix to the problem? Get rid of the law that says you're not allowed to drink. And so, and hey, by the way, so now the next thing I think is coming. I don't know when or how fast, because they got a lot of things to work out. Remember this word or this phrase, okay? Pre-enrollment. So I've always said, like, you know, like a Will Gates when you were coming up, or you guys are coming up, or whoever, someone locally here in Los Angeles. Okay, there's a big Nike program in town, and they want to pay a kid's family $10,000 to have that kid play on the Nike circuit for that year. But now here comes the Adidas program in town, and they want to give that family $20,000, which they're probably doing under the table anyway. But they want. Why does that affect the NCAA? Like, why can't they take that money and still go to UCLA and play? Isn't that good for college basketball to have them have that option? So now you have this overtime elite league, which I think is really going to be screwed by this NIL stuff, because that kind of takes away part of their argument to the college kids, and they're shelling out all this money, and whatever their strategy is. But the main thing is, if you take that money from overtime elite, you have forfeited your college eligibility. I think this conversation is going to go in a direction where they say, whatever you did, we got some rules for why you're here in college, but whatever you did or got before you got to college is none of our business.
It's none of our business, right?
Yeah. Why do you care? Why do you care? Like, so.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because that's what happened to Agee and I. Mm-hmm. When Hoop Dreams came out, the NCAA took away our scholarships, even though we started it in 1987 as 8th graders going into high school.
Because I guess you took money for it?
No, because they were going to make money off of it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, we couldn't be in a project that made money.
That made money
off of us.
Not that we were getting paid. We couldn't be in it if it made money.
Yeah.
Isn't that unbelievable? So you weren't on scholarship at Marquette?
Well, we had to take them to court.
Yeah.
So eventually, when we sued the NCAA, the ruling came back and said, because this happened when they were, like, we didn't know that it was going to be a venture that became Hoop Dreams. So with that ruling, that's how we were able to get our scholarships back.
The only ruling, the NCAA's exception for that, like, there's never been anything else like that done again.
Unbelievable. Well, I would be interested to know, even if that would still be the case with this NIL stuff. Again, it's applied to college athletes. You guys had a pre-enrollment situation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll ask that question for you. Like, under the current system, would Will and Arthur have lost their so what happened? What happened with the court case?
Well, the court case came back and said simply because we didn't know that it was going to be a for-profit type situation. So they said that it was to be for PBS, a public station. It was going to be free. So from that ruling, they said you can have your scholarships back, basically.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Did they reimburse you for your legal fees?
No.
You still
It's
waiting for that check? Hey, we'll go to the mailbox, see if that check got here. We'll take
right.
the box. You go to the mail.
Well, the Cartemkin lawyers had to go to bat. They had to step up in our places because we was in college
Yeah.
still. They had to go. They had to go and fight for that in the court of law.
It's a new day, and I'm excited for these kids. I think they should have the chance because I think besides the money aspect of it, just the business sense of it and learning how to take care of that money. You get nickels in your pocket. What are you're gonna blow it? Now it's gone, and like, what the hell did I do? So I'm about life experiences more than anything else, and I think this will enhance that for them.
Yeah, I think it can be great. But let's keep it there for a second. With the one and done rule, which applies to that as well. Do you feel that that's ruined the culture of college basketball? And with the NIL rule change, do you think players are going to stick around?
So my baseline position is that I am for maximum opportunity and
absolutely.
Whether it's kids, whether it's coaches, whether it's sports writers, So I never but what's interesting though, Will, is like when you say about the one and done thing kind of hurting college basketball, people forget before there was one and done, there was none and done.
That's right.
Never played in college. LeBron never played in college. Lou Williams never played in college. Sebastian Telfair and all these guys never played in college. So regardless of whether you like it or not, and I don't really like it, there's no arguing that against the idea that the one and done has helped college basketball. Is college basketball better with Zion Williamson 1 year at Duke or Zion Williamson going straight to the Knicks, right? So it kind of forced those kids into college. And of course, they were only there, a lot of them weren't even there for the full year. So, in that sense, it was unfortunate. But, it's interesting, again, all this conversation, because now you have the G League, you got overseas, you got overtime, and people saying, oh, well, this is really hurting college basketball and it's robbing them of the best players. And again, Kobe never played college. LeBron never played college. When people watch college basketball, they know they're not watching the best players in the world. There's only one place you can watch the best players in the world. They're watching it because they went to the University of Illinois. They went to UCLA. They grew up in Texas and rooted for the Longhorns, right? So I just think there's so much consternation about what are we going to do about these 3 to 5 players who are going to be zillionaires in 20 minutes anyway. And focusing less on what do we do about the kids who actually want to play in college. I'll give you an example of my thinking on this about the draft. I think that there should be no declaring for the draft and pulling your name out. Every college basketball player is eligible for the draft automatically. If they want to take you to the combine, so then if you don't get drafted, you're still in school. And even more so, I think that teams and players might not happen that often, should have the option, if you get drafted, let's say you're a middle of the second round pick and you're just out of the NBA team holds on to your rights. But if they and the player and the family and everybody wants the kid to go back to college, send them back to college. Let them. They're going to develop as a player, and they're going to go to class, and they're going to have structure around them. You guys know what happens when all of a sudden these kids have some money in their pocket and all kinds of free time. Yeah. So, and it's not about like competing with those other entities and convincing kids to be in college. I'm talking about giving kids avenues who want to be in college and not foreclosing them. So all these rules are meant to sort of manage things, get rid of some of these rules, more freedom, more responsibility, more opportunity. And I think college basketball and everybody benefits.
This is what I tell people about the one and dones, because there are only a handful of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like when you say, when you watching college basketball, there's maybe one guy on both teams, just one guy out there that's good enough to make it to the league. But
maybe
Kevin Garnett, I can count him on my hand how many actually did it, like came from high school and became a superstar.
Right.
Only a handful. And so most of these parents out here thinking that their kids are one and done athletes. Oh, he finna go and do it. I'm finna paying all his money for training and all this shit. I'm like, are you crazy? Your kid is okay. Like, just let him have fun. Don't put them expectations on him like that already.
Yeah, it's really sad, and it really goes back to why I love the movie so much. And I always say, this notion of this movie Hoop Dreams about these two kids, like it's about the dreams of these two kids. Well, to me, that's not what the movie's about. The movie's about the dreams of everybody around you and how they could benefit from that, or what they had invested in you, which never gave you the opportunity to have dreams in a pure sense. And, the better you are, the worse that is. And I see it all the time. We were talking before we started, I just came back from the Nike EYBL event in Augusta leading up to the Peach Jam. And I mean, I saw probably a couple dozen kids who will at least spend some time in the NBA, and some who might be, multi-year all-stars. And it's tough. And now can you guys imagine if you came up with the social media and the Instagram and having that? And now when you do something stupid, I know that rarely happens, right? But if you're out about in the neighborhood and you say something stupid or do something stupid, now they got that phone up and it's everywhere and you got to answer for it. So, and what's really sad is if you're a top 100 player out of high school, top 50 player out of high school, you feel like if you're back in college for your junior year, you failed. Everybody's telling you that you failed. Like, that's sad to me. And now we have the transfer portal, and you don't even have to sit out a year anymore. So it's like if you don't have instant success as a freshman, you're panicking, say, "Oh my God, I might have to be a sophomore in college. I better hop on out of here and find some guy who's going to play me and let me shoot." And
how do you feel about that transfer portal?
I have mixed feelings. Again, I fall on the side of opportunity. Like I would say, I got 3 boys. I got no problems raising my own kids. Like if that's what you and your family wants to do, they should have that option. Coaches have the option of changing jobs. I didn't mind the sit out so much. Like first of all, if you're going to talk like it's a business, these colleges have spent a lot of time and a lot of money recruiting you. Like these coaches flew all over the country for 2 years and spent all this money, gave you a scholarship. Like they are monetarily invested in you. And so, okay, if you want to transfer, that's okay, but you got to have some skin in the game. You're going to sit out a year, which by the way, I think is great for your development and also academically to have the credits being able to transfer over. But they could not get around the fact that there were 4 sports where you had to sit out that first time you transferred. Football, men's basketball, baseball, and hockey. Every other sport you can transfer without sitting out. So, like, why can those young men and women transfer and not have to sit out, but the basketball players and football players? Take a couple of guesses as to why that is.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, are mistakes made? Yes. Are a lot of kids running from adversity? Yes. Are a lot of kids improving their situation? These mid-major kids, they play for a couple of years and now they have a chance to go up a level and show what they can do at that level. I think that's pretty cool. Everyone talks about like, the coaches, the mid-majors, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think they should have the option to make mistakes if that's what they want to do.
I like that. Well, Seth, we're going to get back into this basketball thing, man, but I want to take a swing on you real quick.
Right.
Take us back where it all started. The Seth Davis origin story. Tell us about where you grew up. Give us the Seth Davis version of Seth Davis.
Wow. I don't know if anyone's ever cared enough to ask me that question. I mean, this is only fair, by the way. I mean, all the questions that I've been asking you guys over the years to tell me.
That's right.
Because I love you so much. So, okay, I grew up in suburban Washington, D.C. in Potomac, Maryland. My dad was a very prominent lawyer, graduated Yale and Yale Law School, actually went to college with Bill and Hillary Clinton, got into politics. He worked in the Clinton White House and he was in the same fraternity as George W. Bush. So I really grew up around politics. And so a love of news, love of reading. His favorite movie, our favorite movie was and is the movie All the President's Men, about how Woodward and Bernstein broke the Nixon Watergate scandal. I can do that. And All the President's Men, Hoop Dreams, It's a Wonderful Life, and Almost Famous are the 4 movies that I can basically do the whole script end to end. So I grew up with this reverence of writing, journalism, reading. And then on the flip side, he always took me to Washington Redskins games at RFK Stadium. That was back when they were good and easy to root for. Now I hate them. So I saw the local sportscaster on TV and said, well, he's having fun. He's hanging around the Redskins. He's probably making good money, and I'm a ham, That's going to be me. But I always had the writing piece in it. So I was fortunate enough to go to Duke at the my 4 year. I graduated in 1992, right? So my 4 years at Duke, they went to 4 Final Fours. They played in 3 final games, and they won 2 national championships. So someday I'm going to write a book about my undergraduate experiences at Duke, and the title is going to be "I Hate Christian Laettner Too."
Wow.
I love it.
I say it out of love. So from there, I went but I always had the TV. So when I was at Duke, I also had a TV show at the cable station. I wrote for the newspaper. I was on the radio. So I kind of did all that stuff. And once in a while, I actually went to a class.
What was the name of the campus newspaper?
It's called The Chronicle.
Oh, really?
And Cable 13 was the TV station. I started my own TV show called Cameron Corner. Duke did not have a journalism or communications program. I was a political science major. But the upside of that is I was basically the only guy who wanted to do this. You guys know a guy named Dan Bernstein. He's on the radio in Chicago. He was at Duke at the same time.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's on the Score. So I always had this twin track of writing and television and never felt like I needed to ultimately choose one or the other. But I did feel like writing was going to be my path into TV, which is pretty amazing how it all turned out that way. So I went to New Haven for a couple of years, covered high school sports, did my grind, got my big break. I applied to Sports Illustrated. I started as kind of a low entry level fact checker where you're working on other people's stuff, but you're constantly, it forces you to be proactive, pitching your own stories, finding ideas, going to the editors, kind of pushing the envelope without making an ass of yourself. And then once I got kind of valuable on the college basketball beat, I was like the college basketball beat writer. I kind of flipped that into TV. They started a network called CNN/Sports Illustrated. And I started doing TV work from there and found myself a little agent to try to bang our way. And somehow I got a shot on CBS at the 2003 Final Four. They had a Sunday show called the Final Two Show. And so I was invited to go on to talk about like coaching changes. That was the year that North Carolina had fired Matt Doherty as coach. Roy Williams was coaching Kansas in the national championship game, and the speculation was, would he take over that job? So I just came on and did a segment, and they thought I did well enough to kind of bring me on the next year and start working me in. And before I knew it, I was sitting next to Clark Kellogg and Greg Gumbel at the term.
Wow.
And guys, if I tell you, I think you know me well enough to know that this is true. All these years later, it's like I think I've done like 18 years, 17 years maybe now with CBS on the tournament and doing the Final Four. And some people, you might ask, like, does it ever get old or the routine, or is another Final Four doing it again? I appreciate it more and more every year. Like every year, like when I'm there, I swear to God, I walk around my head in the clouds. Like, I can't freaking believe this is my life. So I have a spirit of gratitude and a gratitude practice that I stay with, try to stay humble, work hard, treat people well, and most of all, get lucky. And that's what I've been most of my life, which is lucky.
I do got to throw this at you, though. I saw you on the NCAA tournament. What's up with the dancing?
You like that, right? What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
If you're gonna, what I learned from that? If you're gonna dance on TV, make sure you're dancing next to Clark Kellogg and Wally Serbia.
Okay, gotcha.
You were shining.
That's right. You did shine.
That was actually my idea.
Really?
Because we have the little dancing emojis, and I'm like, I want to dance with those guys. So let's do a thing. And then like it was going to be just me, and I'm like, all right, well that might be a little awkward. And then they made it, all of us. So I can rock the dance floor at a bar mitzvah. You should catch my ass sometime. I can sing a little bit too, but I'm not going to ruin it'll be the end of your podcast if I start singing.
So your high school.
Yes.
Our high school. What was your high school like?
It was a little different. I'm not going to lie, a little different. It was more of a St. Joe's without the Catholic, with more Jews.
What was it? What was it located at? Like, give me the neighborhood. Like, what area?
It was a very nice rolling hills. They've come a long way since then too. Like it's right now, Bullis is about as nice as any college campus as you'll see. It's in that same league as Sidwell Friends, which is where the Obama girls went. Jimmy Carter's daughter went there. Georgetown Prep. Landon. These are high end private schools. So
wow.
They worked you hard. I mean, I really do remember going to Duke, and of course, Duke is much harder to get into now. 1988, Seth Davis would have zero chance to get into Duke now, believe me. And it was still a very good school. But I do remember going back there and feeling that I was a little bit more prepared for that, and especially like writing papers and. Shout out to Mr. London, was my American literature teacher. My first real writer. He was tough. First day of class, he's like, I don't really give out a lot of A's. I think A's should be earned. And it was a senior class, but I wiggled my way in there as a junior, thinking, oh, I'm this great writer. I don't think I got an A until the end of my senior year, but by that time I knew that I earned it. Wow. And I'm still in touch with him. So listen, we weren't flying jets or anything, but it was, I never wanted for anything. I went to a private high school and a private university and didn't have any debt when I got out. And I think, frankly, it places a higher burden on somebody like me to use my platform and use my voice to not just use my voice, but use my ears, really listen a lot. I mean, I feel like in the last year and a half since the whole George Floyd thing, and now as a dad living out here in a nice town in California by the ocean, like really talking to my kids about this, like you're going to sit here. This is why I want them to watch something like Hoop Dreams. Like the way we live and the way your friends live is not the way most of the world lives. And so I'm not asking you to feel bad about that. I'm not asking you to feel guilty about that, but I am asking you to be humble and feel blessed and always have an open mind to how everybody, and I think that's a good rule for everybody. It's that old saying, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you talk. I'm still working on that.
So you're in high school. What was it like in terms of your like, when did you fall in love with sports or when you fall in love with the game of basketball? Where did that come from?
So growing up in the DC area, when I did, it was all about the Washington Redskins. Forgive me for saying the racist name, but that's what they were called.
Hey, that was my team too. I loved them.
I mean, they were John Riggins and Joe Theismann.
Yes.
That was another full circle moment for me. So I grew up a huge John Riggins fan. I wore a 44 jersey to every game. When I had a bar mitzvah, the theme of the bar mitzvah party was the Redskins. And each table was a player. It had like a little centerpiece little thing. And so my table with all the kids there was the head table was John Riggins, right? So fast forward 20 years, John Riggins DMs me over Twitter to ask me to go on his radio show. Wow. I'm like, okay, go. So I go on that show. I'm like, look, I know you're MVP of the Super Bowl. You're in the Hall of Fame, but clearly the crowning achievement was when you were the head table at my bar mitzvah in 1983. So sports wise, and my dad, and because his dad, my dad grew up a huge Willie Mays fan and a big sports fan, and what a great thing for fathers and sons to share is sports, because you always have something to talk about, right? And it's also a window into all these, whether it's Colin Kaepernick or the gay football player who just came out again. It's a window into all these really great life conversations. My dad took me to games. I mean, he took me to all 4 Redskins Super Bowls. When I was a kid, we had another politically incorrect nickname, Washington Bullets tickets. 1978, 79, Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld were the frontline guys. I did a thing with Elvin Hayes and Jim Nance at the University of Houston a while back. Dick Enberg, God rest his soul, about the UCLA game in the Astrodome. And I said to Elvin Hayes, you were the first athlete that I was like, holy, like Elvin Hayes was huge for the Bullets. So that shared experience had a big effect on me. And again, you guys are old enough to remember this. I explained to the younger generation, when we were coming up, you got your sports news from the local guys, right? Channel 4 was NBC. Do you guys remember the George Michael Sports Machine? Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Show? Absolutely.
Every Sunday night.
Every Sunday night. Well, George Michael was the NBC sportscaster in Washington, D.C. And so we got him all the time. And Channel 9 was a CBS affiliate. They had a guy named Glenn Brenner. I don't know if that name means anything to you. He was hilarious. And he was my hero. And my dad went down to the station one night to do political commentary on the air. And he got me on the phone with Glenn Brenner. And I ended up doing like a little internship with him. I did a high school paper on Glenn Brenner. And tragically, he actually died of a brain tumor when he was 44 years old. But like I say, I looked at those guys and I just said, that's what I want to do. And it was actually a competitive advantage because, I mean, how many 15, 16-year-old kids can really kind of say with some high degree of specificity, that's what I want to do. So when I'm in high school, I was the editor of the school newspaper, and I did a little internship down at CBS and Channel 9 and watched Glenn Brenner and do his work. So when I'm applying to a school like Duke, I didn't necessarily have the grades and the test scores that they were used to, but they saw that I had this type of passion in that. And then when I got to Duke, so I kind of really did always know it. And it's why I almost feel guilty about how well it panned out, because it really is. I mean, it actually going a lot better than I would envision.
What was George Michael's tagline? How you go? Let's take you down to Florida Gaines.
Yeah,
to Gainesville, Florida.
That's right. Which, by the way, he got from a guy named Warner Wolf. This is another. As you guys are bringing back all these memories. So Warner Wolf started off in Washington, D.C., and then he went to New York. His thing was, all right, let's go to the videotape. He was a little itty-bitty guy. Let's go to the videotape. He had a big shtick about it, right? So he would do Friday mornings on the CBS morning show. Oh, here's Warner Wolf with our weekly sports report. All right, he had cards. He's throwing them around. Let's go to the videotape. I thought it was so cool that I would videotape his segment. So I had one VCR tape. Explain to the young folks what a VCR tape is, by the way.
Exactly.
I would record his segment on a Friday morning, and then the next week I would record the next one. On that one tape, I had, a couple hours worth of his stuff. So it, I'm lucky to enjoy what I do, right? So it just looked. I'd say I had a big plan. It just looked like a fun way to make a living. And my dad was a lawyer and is a lawyer. And is obviously very, very good at what he does, but I never wanted to go to law school because it didn't look like as much fun as what I'm doing now.
So was it just you? You got any brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister, Marlo, who's a year and a half older than me, who's always been my biggest fan and greatest protector. Her and her older friends, who I could never have any fun with, but they were always around. And then I have two younger brothers by my dad's second marriage, Josh and Jeremy. So there's four of us, and there's my dad and my stepmom, and my mom, by the way, who's also been remarried for a long time, is my angel, my lodestar in terms of my health. My mom got cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she did have traditional treatment and chemotherapy, but she came out of the medical field because she used to manage medical offices. So she knew what was good about the medical industry and what was not good about it. And so, of course, you get cancer, the first thing they say is we're going to bomb you with chemotherapy. And most people who die of cancer end up dying from the chemotherapy, sadly. So she got chemotherapy, but she involved a lot of other health aspects to her body that made the chemo localized and made her able to take the chemotherapy. And now she has, at the age of 75, created an entire business. She writes, she speaks, she does coaching in the health space. If you saw her, she's stunningly beautiful and immensely positive, and just has a lot of really great knowledge about how to eat, what to drink, because she's got to keep her body clean, because if she eats the wrong things or lives the wrong way, her cancer can come back. And so she's not only been able to stay healthy and live a vibrant, beautiful, healthy life, but she's parlayed that into a business where she does internet marketing and stuff that I wouldn't have the first idea how to do.
What's the name of mom's business?
RenewedLivingAcademy.com is her website. She and her husband, Nevin, do it. If you saw her and I told you she was 75, you'd slap me over the face for lying.
I want to meet this lady. I got to meet your mom.
She's 20 years young. Hey, man, she'll reorient your whole thing and you'll never feel better.
Man, I would love to meet your mom, because I would love to know just how that whole cancer experience, because my mom just beat stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh.
Yeah. So she did the chemo thing and all of that stuff. And like you said, like it that alone would damn near kill you. But she's a tough ass lady, man.
We're going to put my mom on the telephone with your mom and
Yeah.
we're going to help her out. And, this is something, and living in California where everybody's so healthy and exercising and you're outside and you're eating right. And I do some fasting, I do some juicing. One thing that really saddens me is we talk about race and systemic racism. One thing I think about is the food choices that people have who grow up in an inner city environment. And when you're eating bad food when you're really young, it sets you on an unhealthy path. I mean, you develop your physiology and your biology that sets you on a path which is really difficult. And it's a big reason why you see in Black and Latino communities higher rates of obesity, diabetes and heart issues and all this stuff. And it just makes me really, really sad if we could just help people give them better options, better food options and better food choices. So I'm pretty passionate in that area, but I would definitely going to put Elaine and Sheila on a telephone together. That I promise you.
I love it. I love it. Well, we want to jump into, man, again, but staying in your family, your dad, we know he's a high power lawyer. How was that growing up in the household, knowing, and your dad worked with some famous people? I mean, even currently, your dad is doing some very powerful things. What's the good and the bad of that?
Well, again, so it's, if you ask people nowadays, like, what do you think of politicians? They're probably not going to have nice things to say. And the politicians have earned that. They've worked very hard to earn that. Mm-hmm. I wish anybody could have somebody think about them and talk about them the way my father, Lanny Davis, talked about John Kennedy. So I grew up in a house where these people were revered. And my dad, was a college student in the 60s, was able to get a student deferment in Vietnam. And that generation, I mean, like I say, he was in the same law school class as Hillary Rodham, and they became good friends. They all thought they were going to be president. And a couple of them were right. A lot of them, John Kerry, George Pataki, who was the governor of New York, and Joe Lieberman, you recall, was Al Gore's on the vice presidential ticket. We don't really have this word technically in the Jewish religion, but Joe Lieberman is basically my godfather, because you guys know what a bris is? You know what a circumcision is, where they perform the ritual on the male child?
Okay. Yes.
My dad being squeamish, it's the father's job to hold his son. Well, I've done this 3 times. It's not pleasant, but it's what we do as dads. My dad was such a wuss about it. He actually hid in the bathroom while the girl was studying was gender mutilation.
Mutating you.
Mutilating. So the future U.S. Senator from Connecticut, almost Vice President of the United States, Joe Lieberman, held me. He was what the Hebrew word is Sandek. So I call him my godfather. So when I see him, I hug him, I kiss his ring, I call him Godfather. But they grew up with this idea of service, and that politics and government could be a force for good. That doesn't mean government has to make every decision in people's lives, but it should be a force for good to bend that arc towards justice. He was at the March on Washington, standing in front of Dr. King that day. So they were all very involved. He ran for Congress a couple of times. I have some very early memories of his campaigns, came very close to winning a congressional seat in Maryland, but was very, very involved in politics and campaigns. When I was 10 years old, Ted Kennedy was challenging then President Jimmy Carter for the Democratic nomination, which is a pretty big time move. And we actually had a fundraiser at our house for Senator Kennedy, who came to the house. I remember him speaking at a big crowd in the house. So I've grown up with all this stuff. I have to say, and he'll confirm this, this is kind of known, when it came to my man Barack, we kind of, because my dad and loves Hillary, and I love Hillary Clinton too. I mean, how can you not love Hillary Clinton? But the first time I saw Obama, not just at the first speech that he made, but when I dug in on him and I read his book and I listened to, he gave a speech that was like a podcast to a religious group called Call for Renewal. It's out there somewhere, where he just broke down in the way that he does all the because I feel like Democrats have really done a bad job speaking to people of faith. We have ceded this ground where I think we have a strong case. I don't like to enter religion and politics, but I think we have a strong case that if you actually go back and read the Bible and you read some of the things that like Jesus said, like they kind of conform with a lot of things that we believe, but it certainly doesn't belong to one party. So things like that. So he was all in for Hillary and I was all in for Barack at the beginning, but we all came together and celebrated that. And more recently, Will, what you might be referring to is my dad got put in touch with Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal lawyer. So he didn't know him, but they got kind of put together. And my dad was basically like, if you're up for taking Donald Trump down, I'm up for helping you. And my dad, I have to say, I won't say, obviously not single-handedly responsible, but without my father, I truly believe, remember that day with the hearings that the world stops, everybody could watch him? I really feel like that would not have happened but for my dad, because my dad is so entrenched now in Washington, very well respected on both sides of the aisle. I interviewed John McCain once for a digital show, and when it was, and only because my dad asked him to do this for me, and when it was over, John McCain praised my dad and said, he's a great man. He's so loyal. I really like him. Like, can you imagine anything than that man, John McCain, whatever his politics? I can't admire any human being more than I admire John McCain. So anyway, my dad has relationships on both sides of the aisle. He really understands the media and the press because that's what he did for Bill Clinton. So between the legal aspect of it, the relationships on the Hill, because that hearing wasn't going to happen 50 different times, and it finally happened. So the world stops to watch this hearing, and everyone's watching Michael Cohen test. And I met Michael Cohen and had lunch with them in New York. So they go to take this lunch break, and I'm watching my screen, and everyone's talking about Michael Cohen. And my dad was sitting right behind him the whole time. And I texted my dad, I said, stay off your phone because we can see you the whole time. 5 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's my dad. I got Michael here. What'd you think? I'm like, doing pretty well, man. Keep telling the truth. And Michael only wanted to talk about his own son, who's a baseball player. So, it's a pretty cool. I'm a political junkie. It's hard these days, but I'm very interested in the news. And my sons have the same feeling. And just kind of pay attention to you don't have to be like, you don't have to watch CNN all the time. That's bad for your mental health. But pay attention to what's happening and open your ears to what other people are saying instead of explaining to them how you feel.
I know Michael Cohen is probably kissing the whoever ass he needed to call your daddy. Like, that's the best call he made. Like, who is that guy to say, hey, call Seth Davis' dad?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean,
who is that person? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how it happens. And my dad, he's a crisis management attorney, and he takes on a lot of controversial clients. And so he gets, here's Lanny Davis representing. It's like, hello, like he's a crisis management attorney. Every client he has is getting really, really bad publicity. So it's like, here's Lanny Davis taking on another, low life guy. And I'm like, well, that's, kind of part of it. And by the way, there's sometimes there's another side to the story that you might not have heard. So I give my dad a lot of credit for the bravery because he's such a lightning rod for criticism that as soon as the word goes out that this guy's been represented by Lanny Davis, that kind of becomes part of the story. But I'll tell you what, one thing I know about my dad is that reporters trust him because he helps them.
Yeah.
He doesn't badger them. He understands that they have a job to do and that, their job might not perfectly align with his client's desires, but he still respects that. And I'll say one last thing about my dad is that my dad, not so much recently, but has spent a lot of time on Fox. Like, even though he's a liberal Democrat, he went on O'Reilly a lot, Hannity a lot. Those guys like him. And a lot of people who my dad gets recognized a lot. And a lot of people say to him, you know what, I really disagree with your politics, but I respect you. You're civil. You're a gentleman. You don't call people names. He takes more fire from the left than the right. If you think about the way that I talk about sports, I try to be that same guy. And again, I'm not diminishing what anyone else does, but I try to be understanding. I try to be civil. And I think, like the college coaches know that I might write if I'm going to write something about them they don't like, or if I'm going to get a piece of information I'm going to report about them, they know I'm going to call them and let them know what's coming and ask them to give their side of things and try to have some balance to that. So
that's good.
I've never talked about this though. I can't believe how you guys are even interested in this, but I feel like I'm in therapy right now.
I am. I want to know a little bit more too. What was it like though, growing up in the household with your dad? Like, did you know at a young age? And also, did you think politics was going to be your life at one point?
That's a great question. I mean, first of all, like not to overstate how big time he is, right? Like while I'm growing up, I knew he was good at his job. And I certainly knew he was around all this. It really started for my dad at this level when Bill Clinton became president, because this was his friend. And Bill Clinton, they threw everything at that dude and never got him. I mean, when you think about the stuff they were talking, like there was literally a scandal about the travel office. Like that's what anyway. So, a lot of the people who were working inside the White House couldn't necessarily go out on TV defending him. So my dad was able to do that. And so he went on, Geraldo Rivera had a show, and he went on defending them over this Whitewater thing, which turned out to be a big fat nothing burger. President Clinton saw him on the air that night and called him and started, asking him to help him get out more. And that led to him getting the job. Let me give you a quick aside, kind of a random tangent, but this is good stuff. So this past year on the selection show, I made the crazy prediction that Colgate was going to beat Arkansas in the first round. Well, you can imagine what happened to me on Twitter as soon as I got off the air, and I texted with Eric Musselman, the Arkansas coach. I said, "You're welcome." So the year before, I had gone to see a show in New York City with my dad, and by total coincidence, Bill and Hillary Clinton were there. So we worked our way down to see them. And as soon as President Clinton saw me and my dad, he walked right past my dad and up to me because he wanted to talk about college basketball. So this was he is a legit. I can't say I know him. I've met him a couple of times. I'm telling you, he's a legit. He talks to Calipari all the time. So anyway, I got a picture with President Clinton that night at the show. So that night on Twitter, when I was getting lit up by people from Arkansas, I put out that picture of me and Bill Clinton. And I said, by the way, not everybody from Arkansas hates me. Arkansas, of course, wins the game that night from Bill Clinton's Twitter account. He took my tweet of me saying that and the picture, and it said, "I still like you, Seth." So that was a former president.
Love it.
But yeah, I mean, what I would say, Will, and answer your question, is not necessarily about my dad being like big time so much as showing me a love of history. I've read so many history books and real thick books I just read the one, Doris Kearns Goodwin, about Teddy Roosevelt in that era. I'm a voracious reader, and he was always a big time reader. So just kind of an appreciation, and it makes you feel better when you see all this crap going on right now. Anytime you read history, you realize, we've been here before. It's same old, like Teddy Roosevelt, like it was the same. It changes, it manifests in different ways, but it really is the same stuff. And that should give you some ray of hope. So that was really a great gift that he gave me, was a love of reading, a love of history, pay attention to politics, civility, using all this as a force for service and a force for good.
Well, man, we won't jump into your college days. we gotta go there. Like,
and what happens at Duke stays at Duke, man.
What happens? Absolutely.
Man, this is great.
Hey, Seth, look at this though. What was your other schools that you were thinking about going to?
So, I did think about some of these traditional journalism schools, so Northwestern and Syracuse. If memory serves, I got into University of North Carolina as well, which had a pretty good journalism program. And I'm honestly not sure. Now, my dad went to Yale, and I did try to get into Yale and did not. And I'm sure that if I had, I would have gone, because how do you not go to Yale? But right. I'm certainly glad at this point that I didn't. I still think I would have gone into journalism as sportscaster, all that. But let's be honest, the whole Duke experience and being there with those guys and still being connected. I just did the Peach Jam, seeing all those guys even now. It was just something about Duke. I went and visited it. It was a beautiful spring day. It was a beautiful campus. And I knew they had a big time sports program. And I knew they had a newspaper and a TV station, a radio station. I figured I'll just come here and do that, So it's interesting now because I have a son who's going into his senior year of high school, and he kind of wants to do what I do because I work for a living. So we're having those same conversations. Like, you don't have to you can go to a place with a great program, but you can go somewhere and be an English major, a philosophy major, or art major. Like, be a person, be a good person. Learn how to learn how to work.
Never stop learning.
Never stop learning. Life is a learning, and you guys are a great example of that. The way you've gone through your life.
You chose an institution that didn't have a journalism program, though. But that was your, in a sense, your hoop dreams. You wanted to do journalism.
Yeah.
So why Duke?
Like I say, I can't say that I really gave it that much thought. I guess the answer is I didn't think it was a deal breaker.
Okay.
I didn't. Again, it ended up being to my advantage. Like, if I'd gone to Syracuse, they have a great Newhouse School of Communications, but I would have been one of 300 dudes trying to, call the basketball game. There was like 2 of us. I remember after freshman year, the basketball team makes the Final Four, and I'd done some stuff for the sports channels, and I'd done some really cool pieces. And there's like this meeting at the end of the year, all of the shows for the student TV station. And I'm like, I notice you guys don't have a show here dedicated to the basketball team. They're like, no, we don't. I'm like, you guys mind if I start one? Knock yourself out. So I was the producer. I was the video camera. I edited video. I called it Cameron Corner. I went to some of the local businesses and I said, will you donate like a basketball hoop with the Duke logo on it as a background thing? I got a sign made. I wrote a letter to Coach K. He was my very first guest. He hasn't been heard from since, obviously, but if you're going to start a show, who are you going to get? Like Coach K. Well, I mean, all he can do is say no. So I sent a letter. His assistant called me, said he'll do it. When do you want to do it? I'm like, when does he want to do it? Like, give me a day. I had a little studio audience. And so I was able to get a lot of reps and a lot of experience. But I guess I knew they had a good sports program. I knew they had a TV station, a radio station, and a newspaper that I could do work at. And I knew it was a great school. And I'm like, and it's a, like I say, great campus, so. If I thought about it more, maybe I wouldn't have gone. So I'm glad I didn't think about it more.
You know what I think about Duke when I first start watching them, like middle 80s, 85, 86, somewhere up in there. I always thought like Tommy Amaker and Johnny Dawkins got treated like gods on campus.
Well, you're not far off.
I'm like, them dudes, it seemed like the arena loved them 2 guys.
Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm sure it's on your bucket list. And if I can help, I'd like to help. Have you ever seen a basketball game in Cameron? I assume you never had that experience?
No, never.
Okay.
Never.
Well, let's work on that. Have you been there, Will?
Well, we got blasted there. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? You played from Marquette?
Yeah. Even my son played there. When he was at Furman University, they played Duke. This one, Jahlil Okafor was a freshman. So
how about that?
He's had the Cameron experience too. Yeah.
Chicago kid. Yeah. So Tommy's now coaching at Harvard. Tommy's gotten to know my dad a little bit, by the way, which is really kind of cool. They always ask about each other. And Johnny Dawkins is at Central Florida. 2 of the finest gentlemen you will ever want to be around. So Tommy was an assistant when I was there. He was a guest on Cameron Corner. And my senior year, they had open tryouts for a walk-on. Now, despite being a 5'9" Jewish guy, I had it'd be a little bit of game. I played pickup every day at Card Gymnasium, so I could hit an open shot. I could not make a fool of myself. I knew I wouldn't be good enough to make the team, but I also knew that if I tried out, I'd have a great column out of it. So I tried out, and I participated in walk-on tryouts. And the 2 referees for the 5-on-5 games that they ran were Tommy Amaker and Mike Bray, who of course is now at Notre Dame. And I was just with Mike Bray in Georgia, and the first thing I say to him was like, "Why are you here? You can't evaluate talent for shit because like they're all blank for cutting me." And Coach K to this day, if I'm ever around him or introduces me, he's like, "Yeah, Seth, they walked on, I cut him." And, he made us all laugh. And
wow!
So, yeah, I love that.
And how about this? 1991. All my fraternity brothers, we went to Indianapolis for the Final Four, and I was at the famous Duke UNLV upset. And the starting point guard, of course, for UNLV was Greg Anthony, who 15, however many years later, is sitting up with me at the desk on CBS calling
Yeah.
the NCAA tournament in college basketball. So that game may have come up once or twice although I wouldn't, I don't talk trash to those guys because I was my buddies and he was a great player, but it may have come up from time to time.
Agee and I, we got this thing called halftime. We're going to hit you with some quick zingers and see what you give us. So,
love it.
First question is: there's a lot of Seths out there. Where do you rank on that list?
Very low. Very, very, very low. You can line them all up, and it's Seth Towns, plays for Ohio State. I think my favorite might be Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen.
And his movies are obviously hilarious, but his book is so off the charts funny. This was another cool thing about social media. I'm sure he has no idea who I am, but I got his book as soon as it came out. I read it in like a day or two, and I wrote on Twitter something to the effect of, no surprise, Seth Rogen's book is hilarious, and I put his handle on it, and he tweeted back at me, "Thank you." I'm like, "Oh my God, Seth Rogen tweeted at me." So that was pretty cool. And his marijuana haze somehow it penetrated. So yeah, I mean, Seth Meyers and Seth Curry obviously completely outshines me in that respect. So you guys know. Will, I want to ask you this question since you're the pastor of the group. Do you know who Seth was in the Bible?
Absolutely.
The forgotten child of Adam and Eve, right? Cain and Abel got all the headlines because one of them killed the other, and Seth was just out there grinding. Seth was just grinding.
But he also walked right into heaven too. So he gets some kudos for that. Okay. Yes. Let me give you my top Seths.
Okay.
Seth Rogen, I'm with you on that.
Okay.
Seth Curry, Seth Meyers, Seth MacFarlane, Seth Green, and of course Seth Davis. Yeah. So you made my top 6.
I'm comfortable with that. That's a pretty good list. If I'm number 6, that's pretty good. I'm sure there are a few more.
That's right. So look, what's your top 3 favorite interviews you have ever done?
That John McCain one comes to mind. The chance to sit down with someone who I respect on such an incredible level. I did interview Bill Clinton at the U.S. Open golf. That was when my dad was working in the White House and the tournament was at Congressional, and I just got into Sports Illustrated, and I went down, they let me in his box, and I interviewed him, and then I shook his hand and said, "Thank you." And I swear to God, at the very moment that I shook his hand to say, "Thank you for letting me interview you," NBC cut to a live shot of President Clinton watching the U.S. Open. You know how they'll show them, once in a while on the telecast? Yeah. So you got everybody in the Sports Illustrated offices is watching the final of the U.S. Open. Ernie Els won. And there's Seth Davis shaking President Clinton's hand. Unbelievable. You know what else comes to mind? A guy we haven't mentioned. I covered golf for many years for Sports Illustrated. John Daly.
John Daly
is a gift to sports writers because, golf, they're a little uptight on the PGA Tour, right? They're generally, I'm not disparaging, they're not like super interesting people, and they're very closed off. John Daly, John Daly has all of these personal issues. He's an addict. He's been this and that. He's been arrested. He's been married 1 million times, and he tells you everything. So I used to hang out with him on his bus at he'd play golf, and then he'd go to his bus in the parking lot and sell merchandise. And I'd just hang out on his bus with him for hours, drinking beers and hanging out and taking notes and writing about him. And he was like, "This is my life," and hang out. And so I spent quite a bit of time with him, including one time sitting next to him at high stakes slot machines in Mississippi during the tournament. He won about $85,000 during the 60 minutes that I was with him.
Wow. Give me your 3 toughest interviews.
I don't know if I've had any real combative interviews. I mean, I've had interviews where we get into sort of sensitive areas and people get emotional. I mean, to be honest, if people are crying when you're interviewing them, then you're probably it's probably a really good interview. And one of my more serious interviews with John was John Daly was at a time when He was going through really major trauma with his soon-to-be ex-wife, and including some physical domestic abuse her to him. And he, poured his heart out to me one night. I did an interview. Again, I wouldn't say a tough interview, but young man, this is where you're grateful that people trust you enough to use you as your vessel. But there's a young man at UCLA named Jalen Hill, who was one of the kids when one of the Ball brothers he got arrested in China for shoplifting. And there were two other players. Jalen Hill was one of those players who also got arrested. And so he was back at UCLA, and I kind of went there to the story on him kind of resuming his life. And he starts telling me towards the end of our interview about some of the mental health issues that he's had, including kind of serial chronic panic attacks and anxiety attacks, which are totally unrelated to his experience getting arrested. But that's another thing I'm really grateful for, by the way. We talk about sports being a window into the world. We have come a very long way in a very short period of time with the issue of mental health, where, for someone like Dak Prescott to admit having, you guys know the locker room mentality. You're not supposed to show weakness. Well, we're getting to the point now where people understand that showing weakness is actually the toughest thing you can do. A guy like Jake Glazer, who I've never interviewed him, but he covers football for Fox, the NFL, and he does a lot of MMA training, and he's had all kinds of big-time mental health challenges. He's very open and honest about it. So for a young man like Jalen Hill to share his mental health challenges with me at that point, a guy he's never met, doesn't know, knows he's going to write about it for all the world to see, and he was inspired by Kevin Love. Again, I wouldn't describe those as tough interviews, but when you have a sensitive interview, it's a more of a delicate interviewing process.
Who are this might be a tough one here. Who are the top 5 college players you watched during your career?
Well, I start with someone who was before I was in my career, but somebody who I watched up close and in person while growing up in the state of Maryland, and that is Len Bias. And I contend still, and maybe this is just my sort of 15, 16-year-old brain exaggerating, but it's really not if anybody's ever watched video. I think Len Bias is the best college player I've ever seen play live. I'm not saying he's the best of all time, but he was Michael Jordan with a jump shot. He was 2 inches taller than Michael Jordan. One of my favorite all-time sports stats. How about this? We think of Len Bias, 6'8", strong, power forward, jumped out of the gym. When Len Bias was a senior at Maryland, he led the ACC in free throw shooting. My man had touch. Now, this was before the three-point line, so I assume he would have been able to extend that out. He is somebody who I would definitely put at the top. I mean, I was there for Christian Laettner for 4 years, and whatever you want to say about his personality or whatever he was in the NBA, he had a very long and lucrative NBA career. I wish people could disparage me. I just looked up the other day, by the way, Kwame Brown played like 12 years in the league and made $63 million. I'm like, right. But what Christian Laettner did is really beyond compare. People remember the buzzer beater he hit against Kentucky, but he also did it 2 years before against UConn. He had 2 buzzer beaters in the regional final to send his team to the Final Four. To go to the Final Four. I'm trying to think of more recent guys. I mean, again, someone who gets disparaged for not panning out as a pro, but Jimmer Fredette, when he was in college, was a bucket. I mean, he was a bucket. So he's someone that stands out. I'll give you a guy that I'm very, very partial to because of his personality, and this will hit home with you guys being where you're from, and that's D Brown. I loved watching D Brown play. I loved interviewing him. I love listening to him talk. I don't know where he is right now. So D, if you're listening, hit me up or something.
He's actually coaching USC now. He's an assistant coach over there. University of Illinois, Chicago. University of Illinois, yeah.
Hey man, I got to reach out to him because that's one of the jokes I kind of make on Twitter is like, if you make me czar, I'm going to get rid of all replays. I'm going to fix the draft. And D Brown and Jimmer Fredette are going to have lifetime eligibility. Like as long as those dudes play basketball. So that's kind of what I think about. Another guy who comes to mind, again, I'm not saying the greatest player, guy I just loved watching and being around was Draymond Green. I'm kind of working on this for my athletic column, but I tweeted on draft night at one point. I looked up and I saw this about when they were passing on him. I said, "Somebody please draft Draymond. You're embarrassing yourself." So I've gotten a lot of them wrong, but that one I had right. And again, his personality. And I actually was walking through LAX one day with my son, who's a huge sports fan, and Day was coming through the terminal. And I don't know if he would remember me, whatever. But with Draymond, he always acts like he's your best friend, regardless. I'm like, Day, Seth Davis gives this big hug, and I pull my son Zach. I'm like, Zachary, come here. I'm like, Draymond Green, and his face lit up. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of cool.
Where does this come from? Sharpie me.
This is a good one to end on. This is a good one to end on because I actually just wrote this down. We're on now like an hour 20. I could talk for that long about Greg Gumbel and Clark Kellogg. Like these are genuine, and I hope this comes across on the air. These are genuinely two of my very best friends, truly. I spend more time with them than I spend with most of my friends, and at that time of year than with my wife and my own family. And I love them both dearly, and because we're always teasing each other, and everyone in the studio just makes fun of me. Camera folks, sound people, producers, everyone just makes fun of me, which makes it fun. So I'm not a good recall guy. Like if you guys like a guy like John Rothstein or Doug Gottlieb, guys I work with, they can remember things, what happened. I'm not good like that. So when I'm on the tournament, I keep like a printed out bracket in front of me, and I would write with a marker who won the game. So that way, if I'm on the air and I'm thinking about who they beat their last game and who they have next, I can just glance down at the desk and see the answer and keep going. So it's just kind of a memory tool for me. And so because you have long hours in the studio and you're just entertaining yourself at some point, I would have a game with Greg Gumbel about, I'm going to Sharpie them, meaning I'm going to write in the winner before the game is over. And how long before the game is over am I willing to take that chance? Because if you get it wrong, now your bracket's a mess. You got to redo it. It's like a whole pain in the butt. So it started as a joke, as most great things do, as a joke between me and Greg Gumbel. And this was years before Twitter. And then Twitter came along. So that would be my thing. Sharpie. All right, I'm going to Sharpie North Carolina. I'm going to Sharpie UCLA. And Greg always thought it was hilarious. And so when Twitter came along, I just kind of started doing it. And it's the kind of thing that translates to a lot of things, right? Like when Biden won the election, Biden, Sharpie, right? Or when I'm tweeting It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, Sharpie, like it just, and so, here I am. I mean, I've written multiple books. I've written like these great articles about my friends, Will and Arthur. And I've said these really smart, thoughtful, insightful things. When I die, the first freaking line of my obituary is going to be Seth Davis, who was known for his stupid Sharpie gimmick on Twitter, died today. I'm glad people have fun with it. And people ask, do I get paid by Sharpie? The answer is no, but they did send me unsolicited a box, and I'll send some to you guys. Sharpie. I don't have any in my desk right here.
Because they got the Sharpie me on it.
I didn't get a dime, but I got a box of pens. That's my life. My life. I get a box of pens and I'm happy. That's it.
Well, Seth, man, we know you got to go. We want to thank you for being on the show, but my guy Arthur got one more question for you. This is the end all questions. Hit him up, Agee.
What is Seth Davis's next hoop dream?
My next hoop dream. This is going to sound corny, and I hope it doesn't come off well, but I feel like my life is a dream. And when I say that, to be honest, I'm thinking more of my wife, Melissa. We're having our 20-year anniversary. I've got 3 sons. Zachary is 17. Noah's 15. Gabriel is 11. As I often say, they drive me crazy and keep me sane at the same time. They're good boys. They do well in school. They're conscientious. They're certainly not perfect by any means, believe me, and neither am I. And they pointed out to me, but I've developed kind of a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice. Like that's an aspiration, maybe a little bit more. What you're talking about, Arthur, is I'd like to write a book about meditation in sports and how high-level athletes are using meditation, and I would like to see meditation and mindfulness and that practice and that philosophy and that science be integrated more into our education system, particularly in underserved communities, because it helps young kids deal with high emotions and high conflict and high stress and pressure. And that's for children of all ages. But the point being is that the whole concept is you really stay in the moment, don't you? So when you talk about your hoop dreams, like I try to sort of think about sort of today and be grateful for my blessings today. I'm alive. Look at us, man. All these years later, we're alive, we're healthy, we're breathing. Like I can see, I can hear, I'm going to walk out. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do that. So I try to tell my kids, the only thing I ever ask you, work hard and just be good people. Just be nice to people. Treat people right. Like whatever, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much quote unquote success you have or what college you get into. Like just be good to people. If you keep the main thing, then sometimes things turn out okay. And the fact that I have this relationship with the two of you is really, I want you to know, a really special part of my life. Like this is my hoop dream that I get to be. I often say like I get to be that guy, right? Yep. Like you walk into a restaurant or a party or whatever, and you see some famous singer, actor, whoever, politician, someone you really admire, and you want to ask them so many questions. But I don't want to be that guy. Well, what I get to be that guy. And I'm sure you guys, I know this podcast is new. You're probably experiencing that too. Like, man, I've always wanted to ask this guy that, but what am I going to go up to him at the stop or whatever? Sit his ass down and really drill. So here I have this great piece of art to bring this interview full circle that really moved me. And I get to reach out, 10-year anniversary at Sports Illustrated. Where are they now? I want to write an article on the Hoop Dreams. It's the 10 years. Like, go do it. And next thing I know, I'm in Chicago with you guys. And that's how we first met. And I've written a couple stories, and we text and we tweet, and we're connected. So it's really this podcast is a window into why I say I feel so blessed. Mm-hmm. It's not about fame or money or quote unquote success. It's the connections you can make and the experiences that you can have. And let's be healthy. Let's be grateful and keep doing what you guys are doing, man. I'm really proud of you. You know that.
I'm the gold of my era. I've been a trending topic. I'm as fly as a feather. My pocket's macroscopic. See, with time I get better. I'm always in the action, kid. Know I got it locked from Chicago where the toughest live. Concrete jungle, earn my stripes on the pavement there. You make it here, then you can make it anywhere. No comparison. Your game is embarrassing. No one can touch me. I'm all for going there again. Yeah, I think I'm ballin' like I'm Will Gates. I'm hoop dreaming, trying to fight against a sealed fate. More faith, think I'm ballin' like I'm Agee. I'm box office and one day they gon' have to pay me. Yeah, I think I'm ballin' like I'm Will Gates. I'm hoop dreaming, trying to fight against a sealed fate. More faith, think I'm ballin' like I'm Agee. I'm box office and one day.
Hoop Dreams, the podcast, an Unlearning Network production, written and produced by Arthur Agee, Will Gates, Matt Hoffar, and Chantel Shan, with audio engineering by Matt Savage. For more episodes, check us out at www.unlearningnetwork.com.
The money getters, gotta be a dog to survive in this cold weather. Ice in my veins, no need for a warm sweater. I'm coming forward, all best believe I won't let up, yeah. Hey, I think I'm ballin' like I'm Will Gates. I'm hoop dreaming, trying to fight against a sealed fate. More faith, think I'm ballin' like I'm Agee. I'm box office and one day they gon' have to pay me. Yeah, I think I'm ballin' like I'm Will Gates. I'm hoop dreaming, trying to fight against a sealed fate. More faith, think I'm ballin' like I'm Agee. I'm box office and one day they gon' have to pay me.